My name is Bob, and I am way the hell into Star Trek. You're shocked, I can tell. Okay, so Star Trek is in a really weird place right now as a franchise because it's kind of bigger than itself, but also not. As a property, it's pretty much bulletproof as the last man standing franchise of optimistic, forward-looking space-age science fiction. I mean, at this point, how would you even begin in 2017 to define the concept of a space travel narrative mostly rooted in soft sci-fi, but not outright fantasy, where technological and scientific progress are presented as innately good and humanity's best days are ahead of it, that uses its setting to explore bigger philosophical ideas and posit theories about how this type of quasi-utopian civilization of spacefaring might be achieved without just saying, you know, like Star Trek. But whereas the Star Trek brand isn't going anywhere, the actual content has been depressingly jogging in place for about... Shit, wait, hold on. When did Deep Space Nine end again? 1999. Holy shit. Yeah, just shy of 20 years since new Star Trek was either good or relevant. Wow. I mean, Voyager was pretty bad, sorry. Enterprise was mostly bad, sorry. That first J.J. Abrams movie turned out to be, like, not the worst thing, I guess, but also pretty forgettable in the end. Then the sequel was a disaster, and the third one was actually pretty good, but by then nobody cared anymore. And meanwhile, the bosses of the whole thing are apparently terrified of advancing the actual Trek storyline any further than the Next Generation DS9 Voyager status quo, because that's basically become the brand at this point. So now we have Star Trek Discovery, which once again compromises in that regard by dropping us back into the original continuity, this time well after Enterprise, and approximately 10 years before the events of the original series. But despite that, this is actually very much a series that's trying to do bold new things with the franchise, and also serve as a flagship property to get people to sign up for CBS' new dedicated streaming service, which, yes, on principle, is extremely irritating. The good news, though, having now watched the inaugural 3 episodes, that's the only thing that's irritating. Discovery gets off to a really good start, firmly establishes that we are indeed back to Trek fundamentals, and if the quality stays consistent or even improves, this could be a really good show. So one of our big new gimmicks here is that Discovery is going to be a much more serialized and bingeable thing than the previous series, to the extent that the Starship Discovery itself, aka our presumed central location and what feels like half the main regular cast, don't show up until episode 3, and that instead of having the main character be a captain of a Federation starship, we are following a lower-ranked crew member as our protagonist. That would be Sonequa Martin Green as Michael Burnham, who we first meet as the first officer on a different ship that, partly as a result of her seemingly rash actions, gets wrapped up in a dangerous encounter with a radical fundamentalist Klingon religious sect. The pitch here seems to have literally been what if ISIS but Klingons, that's actually a trap designed to reunify the splintered Klingon Empire by reigniting full-scale Klingon Federation war as eventually played out on the original series and the first 6 movies. And that's where we get our other shiny new thing. Whereas previous Trek shows have always been content with exploring big themes in a contained episode-to-episode way, Discovery seems to be looking to make the main thrust of the ongoing story about one big idea in particular: multiculturalism. Inasmuch as the terrorist Klingons, whose ideology it's implied is adopted by the reunified Empire, basically boils down to outer space nationalism. They don't like the Federation because it represents the mixing and combining of various diverse intergalactic cultures into a new, better unified future, whereas the Klingons want to recommit to cultural purity, lock down their borders, and Chenmo Konos Dan Chalhua. Mirroring this theme on the good guy side is Burnham herself, in that she's technically human, but was adopted and raised by Vulcans, considers herself to be Vulcan by culture, lives according to their principles and traditions, and even has limited versions of their special abilities. That's an awful lot of unique and different to pack into a character who's already our first black woman lead in the history of the franchise, but Green is up to the task. She is a mesmerizing lead, especially considering we've done the whole am I Vulcan, am I human thing to death in this franchise, but here it gets a new spin, where it's less about, why no, Captain, I did not crack a smile, and more about Vulcan logic makes her a hard ass, but human emotion makes her deadpan sarcastic about it. Even more promisingly, the eventually revealed status quo gives her a lot to play off of in terms of interesting stuff. The aforementioned Klingon encounter goes pretty badly. I mean, no shit, this war has to last from the man trap all the way up through the undiscovered country, and Burnham ends up blamed, largely unfairly, by the galaxy pretty much for starting the war, only to be conscripted back into duty a few years later under suspicious circumstances on the Discovery. A research research vessel captained by Jason Isaacs is a military hardliner who seems to be up to some shady shit in the Section 31 kind of way, and the crew also happens to include not only new friends and would-be enemies, but also some survivors from her previous crew who now have decidedly mixed feelings about her. That's a good setup. So in case it's not obvious, I am overall way the hell on board with this so far. I like the cast, I like the main character, the production value is really strong, I'm digging the uniforms, the ship interiors, some of the new aliens, especially Doug Jones as seemingly our new non-human regular. I even wound up liking the weird new look they gave to the previously unencountered sect of Klingon, and I really like seeing Star Trek be all righteous and confrontational about its particular view of what a better future both mean and look like, planting its flag firmly on the side of borderless intercultural connectivity as the good versus isolationism as the bad, and gearing up Green's protagonist to continually ram that point home hard. At times just by standing on screen and existing, either as the character or just as an actress, especially since the setting seems to have been chosen specifically to explore how and why the Federation took that Kirk-era side detour into being a more explicitly military-esque operation than what we know its founding and eventual future to be. For me, this strikes the same kind of perfect balance between the franchise's thoughtful intellectual side and its pulpier, just-for-fun, gorn-punching roots that Deep Space Nine did once it figured out what it was supposed to be. I love the just this side of cheesy business like Isaac's maybe not a good guy captain, and how it has no fear about pivoting on a dime to some Event Horizon body horror shit to people getting chased around by a big goofy looking space monster. On the other hand, yeah, okay, it's a little concerning that I thought the first two backstory episodes with the Klingon encounter, which basically plays out as an asymmetrical Age of Terror warfare riff on Balance of Terror, if you're gonna steal from the good stuff, were a touch more compelling than the stuff later on the Discovery that presumably represents the series proper, but some of that could well just be that they brought in a special guest star for the first two who unsurprisingly turns out to be a huge scene stealer. Also, as much as I'm always for well-executed fan service, there was at least one right out in the open Easter egg that kind of had me going, geez guys, really? You couldn't wait more than 3 whole episodes for that? But I stress those are really minor issues. I was overwhelmingly blown away by Discovery. This is the best anything Star Trek related has been in a very long time. I am genuinely psyched to see where it goes, and it feels great to have the genuine article back. 3.5 stars, 100% recommended. Definitely give this one a shot.